Hi, I'm PJOP. Each week I take the road on two wheels, sharing stories about life, faith, and our identity in Christ. If you're on a journey too, hit like and subscribe, and I'd love for you to ride with me. If you've been following my journey, or perhaps you're new to my channel today, one thing that I've been going through for many years is I've been struggling between two worlds of being ethnically Korean, but also culturally very American. It's a struggle that I believe many Korean Americans, or in my case, I refer to myself as an American Korean, that we go through. But over time, I've learned to embrace both worlds as they are both part of who I am. Now, in my younger years, I spent many of it in the United States. But as I became an adult and I graduated from college, I returned to Korea in 1999, and I had to learn to become Korean all over again, which was not easy at all. I started off hating the fact that I was a Korean and all I wanted to do was return to America. But over time, something started to shift within my heart. And then in 2002, something happened that further reaffirmed my growing sense that I was finally finding my place in Korea. That summer, Korea and Japan co-hosted the FIFA World Cup. Well, I'm not sure how Japan celebrated, but in Korea, it was nothing short of extraordinary. For every Team Korea match, people gathered in public squares across the country, cheering on the team in front of massive outdoor screens. The most iconic location was Seoul City Hall, where hundreds of thousands of people came together, united by the now famous chant, 대한민국! 대한민국! I had never seen an entire country come together like that. And every time Korea won, which they miraculously did often during that tournament, the streets exploded in pure joy. Beer houses gave out free pitchers, strangers hugged, high-fived, and kissed one another. People jumped and danced in the streets well into the night. And it wasn't just Koreans celebrating. Foreigners joined in too. If you weren't Korean during that time, you wanted to be. The 2002 World Cup was a month-long nationwide party that united people regardless of nationality, race, gender, age, politics, or class. Everyone was invited, and it truly felt like everyone came. Nobody wanted it to end. On the pitch, the matches were electric, full of unforgettable moments. It felt as though the energy of the fans had breathed new life into the Korean players. Korea often played with fire, grit, and something deeper, like they were possessed. It was a team the world had never seen before. In the final Group D match, Korea faced Portugal, led by Luis Figo and a very young Cristiano Ronaldo. Korea had to win to advance. That's when a relatively unknown young player at the time, Park Ji-sung, scored an incredible goal to seal a 1-0 victory, and with that, the improbable became real. Next came Spain. The game ended in a 0-0 draw and went to penalties. With the final kick of the night, Captain Hong Myung-go calmly slotted the ball into the back of the net, sending Korea into the next round to face Italy. Now, Italy was a tournament favorite, and with just 2 minutes left in regulation, they led 1-0. It seemed Korea's fairy tale run was finally over, but then in a moment of magic, Seol Gi-hyun scored an equalizer that shocked the world and sent the match into overtime. And then came perhaps the most legendary goal in Korean soccer history. In the 117th minute, An Jung-hwan connected with a perfect cross, heading the ball past the Italian goalkeeper for a golden goal. Korea had defeated the mighty Italians and made it to the World Cup semifinal for the first time ever. The nation went wild. I lost my voice more than once during that tournament, just like everyone else. Those matches were unforgettable, each one more miraculous than the last. But for me, there was one game that stood out for a very personal reason. It's a match that doesn't get talked about as much as the others. This was Korea's second group stage game against the United States. Now, when I first arrived in Korea as a little kid, back in the 1980s, people would sometimes ask me, if Korea and America played each other in the World Cup, which team would you cheer for? Without a second of hesitation, I'd proudly respond, America, of course! America is the greatest country in the world! But in 2002, when Korea faced off against the US, something felt different. Something had changed inside me. I wasn't exactly sure when it happened or how, but instead of rooting for the Americans, I found myself cheering for Team Korea. That match was played during the day, and I watched it from a meeting room from the office that I worked at with my Korean colleagues, and everyone gathered around the TV, and naturally, they were cheering for the Taeguk Warriors, or as Team Korea is often called. But as for me, before the match began, I figured I'd be quietly pulling for the red, white, and blue. After all, it was only Korea's second match of the tournament, and the full wave of World Cup fever hadn't taken over just yet. I didn't even know the names of the Korean players. I actually knew more about the American team from articles I'd read on ESPN. But as soon as the match kicked off, something unexpected happened. I soon discovered that I wanted Korea to win. Within minutes, I found myself clapping and shouting, 대한민국, along with everyone else. I was swept up in the moment, and I wasn't faking it. It was real. Now, the game ended in a 1-1 tie. Anticlimactic, I know. Most Koreans don't remember it much, probably because it wasn't a win. But in my heart, Korea had won. Because that day I realized I was more Korean than I had ever admitted to myself. It was a turning point. For most of my life, I had hated being Korean. My childhood and youth, when I was a little kid back in the southern city of Daegu, it had left scars that I didn't like to revisit. But somehow, in that moment, I began to embrace Korea. It didn't mean I was fully comfortable in it yet, and I still had a long way to go, but something had shifted. I was no longer fighting it. Instead of trying to deny or escape my Koreanness, I began to look for ways to find my place in it. I won't go as far as to say I suddenly loved being Korean. Not even now could I say that with complete certainty. But back then, I started to try, and that was something new. Why though? Why did it matter then when it never had before? The only answer I could come up with was simple. It was the people. I didn't care before because I hadn't connected, but now I did. When I look back on this chapter of my life, I realized that when I returned to Korea, I came back with virtually no relationships. Whatever ties I had from high school or my earlier years, I had deliberately left them behind because those memories were painful for me, and I wanted nothing to do with them. But the reason I slowly began to accept my Koreanness was because I began to accept the relationships in my life again. Sometimes I look back with a nostalgic, sideward smirk at those days spent trying to make connections on MSN chat rooms or Korean social media sites. Primitive back then, but there were sites called Say Club and I Love School that try to connect people in Korean society back then. Now, part of me thinks I was so naive, maybe even a little foolish to do those things, but another part of me knows exactly why I did it. And it's because we are not meant to be alone. Even if those online friends I met on the MSN chat rooms, even if they existed only online, they mattered to me. I cared about those people. In that season of my life, they were my friends. My first job back in Korea, it was for a broadcast production company called K-Best. And there were a lot of disgruntled people there, so I would go out with them for drinks with producers night after night. And I know that no one truly forced me to do it. No one forced me to get drunk with them or party with them. But it was my choice. I could have said no, but I didn't. Even though it was sometimes very exhausting, embarrassing at times, and certainly not good for my health, I did it because of the relationships that I was in. I'm not saying it was wise or healthy, I'm just saying that's why I did it. It was because of the relationships. It was because of the people. After I left that job, I started working at an international sports marketing company in Korea called IMG. And one of the things that they wanted me to do, which I hated, was the sales, sponsorship sales. I hated it because it always felt so impersonal to me. But the rest of the work, things like attending to Sari Pak's every need when she came to Korea, or helping out with PJ Tour golfer KJ Choi's son doing his homework late at night, or putting together events for LPGA players and then afterwards singing karaoke with them. All of that was meaningful. And it was meaningful because it was rooted in relationships. I wouldn't have worked so hard if I didn't care about the people. Even when I cheered for Team Korea during the 2002 World Cup, it wasn't out of national pride or a deep love for the culture or the history. I come to appreciate that stuff later, but in the moment, it was because for the first time, I had started to feel connected. I had begun to love the people, and I wanted to be in relationship with them. And because of that, where there had once been a heart filled with resentment toward Korea, there now emerged a quiet but unmistakable desire for reconciliation. You know, as I look back on this time of my life, I have this sense of identity. That identity is inseparable from our relationships. So much of who we are, our values, our mannerisms, our interests, and even our sense of purpose is shaped through people we connect with. But in a broken world, relationships often come fractured, whether with family, friends, colleagues, or society at large. If we want to understand who we truly are, we have to be willing to look honestly at those broken places. And if we want to become whole, we must seek reconciliation. But reconciliation with others begins with something deeper. Our reconciliation first with God. In Genesis 3, Adam and Eve broke trust with God, and that rupture became the source of all brokenness between humanity and God and between one another. Blame, shame, and distance replaced intimacy, and that condition has been passed down to all of us. Ever since, in the deepest parts of our souls, we've longed to be restored, not just to each other, but even more so to God. Some say the ultimate purpose in life is to be happy. So we chase happiness through our careers, friendships, marriages, and even in the hobbies we pursue. But if we're honest, these pursuits aren't just about success or fulfillment. They're about something deeper. They're really about relationship. Through the paths we take in life, we long to be connected, to belong, to be seen and loved. Whether we realize it or not, our pursuit of happiness is actually a pursuit of restored relationship. Because what is happiness if it's experienced in isolation? But at the foundation of all of our relationships is our relationship with God. And unless that relationship is restored, none of our other relationships can be fully healed. No matter how hard we try, reconciliation with God is the starting point, and that reconciliation only comes through faith in Jesus Christ. As Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 5:17-21, and this is an abbreviated version of it, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. So we implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. For our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." When I began to embrace Korea, its people, its culture, even its pain, it wasn't just because of an MSN chat room, a job in sports marketing, or a World Cup soccer match. What I didn't realize at the time was that at the core of all of that, Jesus' grace was already at work, reconciling me to himself. And through that reconciliation, he was softening my heart to be reconnected with others as well. His ministry toward me was a ministry of reconciliation. And later, he would call me to live out that same ministry for the sake of others, and ultimately unto him. I want to finish with this one last thought. There are two words in the Korean language for person or humankind. One is 사람, which most people are familiar with. It literally just means a person. The other, the one I prefer, is 인간. It carries the same meaning, but its roots go a little deeper. 인간 comes from Chinese characters that means person and relationship. In other words, to be a person is, by definition, to be in relationship. Now that ancient insight tells us something profound. We were never meant to exist alone. We are relational beings by design. Whoever first coined that term probably wasn't a Christian, but even in ancient Eastern philosophy, we see a glimpse of God's truth that to be human is to be in relationship. And this is why reconciliation with God makes us whole. When our relationship with him is restored, it reshapes every other relationship in our lives. Our humanity comes alive again, and we're drawn toward healing and restoration with others. Now, it will still take me a few more years and some painful experiences to fully grasp the depth of God's loving grace. But if there's one truth I can carry with me from this chapter of my life, it's this. Whether we know God yet or not, we cannot truly know ourselves apart from the reconciliation of our relationships. But true reconciliation and relationship can only come from God. Thanks for riding with me today, guys. I hope this was encouraging to you, and if it was, please like this video because it helps me out a lot. And also, if you like this message, please share it with others and subscribe to the channel for more inspirational messages like this every week. So, see you guys on the next ride.